Hey everybody, I'm so excited about today. We're going to talk about the second commandment. It's going to be awesome and it means more than you think. Let's get into it. So it says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto the thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. So first, that means don't bring God into the realm of the finite. He's an infinite God. There is no such thing as impossible when it comes to God. But it's so easy to bring God down onto the level of something tangible, something that I can understand with my mind, and something that it seems reasonable within the context of the laws of physics and the natural reality that I face every day. But he said, don't do that. And the temptation was this. What's God look like? What can we give to look at to see God? And it's so tempting to just put something in his place. But he said, don't do that. Don't make me fit with the context of the world, because I don't fit. I'm totally bigger than it. I'm totally beyond it. And don't limit me down. And the way they first chose to have idols in Israel was they made a golden calf while God is giving this on the top of the mountain. And it's so funny that that's the commandment that they broke. They said, this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. So that's the commandment that they broke. But watch what they did. They limited him down to something that was somewhat true. God is revealed in the natural world. And there are things where you can look at the calf and you can find the revelation of God. You can find the revelation of God in a tree, in a rock, in a river, in the clouds of the heavens. You can see all kinds of revelations of God, but you can't limit him to that revelation. How many people do you know that have found some little revelation about God in the scriptures, or some little doctrine that is their little pet doctrine, and they've just totally limited God down to that one revelation? It's like, don't do that. Don't make him something smaller than the whole that he really is. And so they took that part. And the Bible said in Psalm 106 that they made a calf in Horeb and worshiped the molten image. Thus they changed their glory into the similitude of an ox that eateth grass. Now, what does that mean? It means that man is made in the image of God, which means man is a revelation of all that God is. He's an expression of God's nature and God's character. And that is the most glorious thing on earth. It's the gift that he gave to mankind that not even the angels can boast that. But we are the image, the possessors of that revelation of the nature of God. And it says they just traded that. They traded it for the image or the similitude, the image of a calf, the image of a cow, right? So when they lowered God, they lowered their own potential. When they lowered and they limited God, what they actually did was limit themselves. You can't actually limit God, but you sure can limit yourself. If you decide God doesn't heal, then you won't get healed. But that doesn't mean I will. God's still a healer. So you didn't actually limit him. What you limited was the access that you had to the glory of God. We don't want to do that. And limiting ourselves is so easy. It's just when we start boxing God in. And now I'm not saying that God can't use man's means. God can use anything that he wants. And God, Psalm 115 says he does what he pleases. And so God can do anything he wants. But I'm not about to limit God and say, God has to use a banker. God has to use a doctor. God has to use medicine. God has to use a lawyer. God has to do it this way or that way or the other way. God doesn't need any of that. That's what they tried to do to Jesus. They said, we'll just go into these towns and buy money. We didn't even have the money to buy food for 5,000 people. And, they tried to limit God down to something. One time I had to buy a vehicle for the ministry and I was $500 short and I needed it that day. And so I was looking through our little money bag, and it had a little pocket in there that I never used, and nobody knew it was my money bag because it wasn't a traditional money bag. And that pocket just had receipts. And lo and behold, I'm $500 short. I noticed a little bit of blue in my receipts. Well, receipts aren't blue, but I know what it is. And I pull out a wad of 5 $100 bills. I asked Katie. She didn't put it in there. I didn't put it. I knew, trust me, 500 was like 5,000 to me back then, okay? Still kind of is. But I did not misplace $500. I didn't have a wad of $500 bills. And so I said, Katie, how did this happen? And I knew it was hidden in my car. Nobody seen it. Nobody had access to it. And we didn't do it. So where did it come from? Does God have to give somebody the idea to give me an offering? Does God have to send me a check in the mail? Oh, no. God can create money and stick it in a pocket in a bag. Why can't he? He's God. He can do anything. So don't limit him down by just one revelation of something. Can he move on you to send me a check? Well, I sure hope he does. But I'm not about to limit God down to where that's how it has to happen. It don't have to happen any one specific way. And it doesn't have to come through man's means. It can come miraculously through God himself. So when it says that we are not to bring him down to the graven image, what it also means is that you have to remember something about God, that God and spiritual things reside in the place of intuition. They are by nature very unscientific. Now, I'm not saying that science disproves God or God's the enemy of science. What I'm saying is God transcends science. Science cannot explain God. It cannot understand God. It cannot reach as high as God. You need something bigger than science for that. And so there's a place in the intuition where God resides. And that's intuition's a mysterious place where thoughts come from and these things. And if you try to bring him down into something physical in front of you, give me a fleece, give me a sign, give me a flash of light, give me a dream. You just aren't always going to get it. So you have to let God live in that spiritual place, that intuitive place, that place where it just comes to you to do something and you really don't know why you're doing it. You just trust the Lord. That place where you don't understand. It's important that we don't eliminate the mystery of faith. And that goes beyond just the intuitive side of that. It's that sometimes we just want a bunch of answers. And I'm just going to tell you, I know some people going through things right now that are so awful that there just aren't answers. You don't have the answers. I don't have the answers. Nobody has the answers. And we can just forget it. There's just not always answers. And there's not always explanations. And you're not always going to understand why your life is going in a certain trajectory. And you're not always going to understand why this season is pushing you forward in the vision for your life that God has. But don't worry about it. Don't eliminate the mystery, because you know what I've learned here recently? I've learned that we don't get faith from situations that are full of answers. And that no matter how many answers and explanations I get or come up with, I don't get more faith. My faith is not stirred by explanations. My faith is not stirred. It isn't strengthened. It doesn't rise to the top by something that's under. Listen, how do you build yourself up upon your most holy faith? Praying in the Holy Ghost, not praying with your understanding. Faith is not built by understanding. It's built by mystery. My faith rises to the surface when I have no idea what God's doing. I'm just trusting him. My faith is brought to the surface not when I have a bunch of explanations on why tragedy has come, but when I fall on my face and say, God gives, God takes away, but blessed be the name of the Lord. When I am able to transcend the natural order and the natural realm of answers and science and explanations, and I get it, and and there's no mystery. When I transcend that place into this place of I don't even have to know why. Now I'm walking in faith. We walk by faith and not by sight. I have to get beyond sight to even walk in faith. And so when we have to let go of sight, that's when we can walk in faith. And so don't eliminate mystery. Don't grave God into stone, into something you can see, taste, touch, and feel and understand. Because when you do that, you are destroying your own faith. And listen, when we start filling in the gaps of things that we don't understand, we're going to misrepresent God. That's what they did with the calf. God's not like a calf. In fact, when Jesus showed up, he was God manifest in flesh, and he was definitely not a calf. So we are going to misrepresent and misunderstand God and really mess ourselves up. I don't even want to say theologically, just spiritually. You're going to be messed up because you're going to think all this stuff about God that's just not true when you have to fill in all the gaps. And I've seen people do that. And there should be this gray area. There should be a mystery in your spirit and in your life about certain things. That it's like, I don't really know where all this lands. I know some things are true. I have guideposts that can help me stay in my lane, but I don't know everything. And that's okay. I'm just not going to misrepresent God. I'm just not going to fill in a bunch of blanks. He didn't tell me what he looked like, so I'm not going to make him a calf. I'm not going to make him an image that I can understand because I don't have to understand him. If we ever misrepresent him by filling in the gaps, then we do something terrible. Worse even than getting our whole mindset about God messed up, we now cease to grapple. And it's very, very, very important that you are Jacob and you go down by the riverside and you wrestle with God because you got your brother's, birthright, and you got your father's blessing, and you got the wife, and you got the children, and you got the money, and you got everything that you wanted, and you're still the same guy with the same problems, right? That grappling, that wrestling down by the riverside. It's like, I've gotten everybody else's blessing. I want your blessing. Laban's blessing wasn't enough. Daddy's blessing wasn't. I need your blessing. And so there's this constant grappling with the disappointments in life and the struggles of life and the tragedies of life and the catastrophes of life and the trials you're going through. And there's this constant grappling of, I don't understand. And that's good for you. You know why? Because number one, it's fellowship. That wrestling match is fellowship. Number two, it's what's growing you up. It's what's making you strong. It's what's increasing your faith. And that faith that's getting you through this battle is the faith you're going to use to heal the sick. It's the faith you're going to use to raise the dead. And it's coming. You're going to need it. It's that faith. What did Jesus say when Lazarus had died? He said, I'm really glad for your sake that he's dead so that you might believe. Because he knew some of those men right there were going to go raise the dead. Who is it that Peter raised? Dorcas? You're going to have your Lazarus moment. And you need to come through this struggle. You need to come through this confusion and this question and this mystery. And it's like, they didn't sit with Lazarus and get raised from the dead and still understand all this stuff. Well, wouldn't it have been easier to just stop him from dying? Wouldn't that have hurt a lot less if you would have just gone? It's not like there was no questions, but the faith that was built by seeing the miracle and the faith that was built by trusting him without the answers led them to the upper room, led them to the miracles that they would see in their own life. You're going to need that faith. So go ahead and grapple. It's a good thing.
Hi! Sorry to interrupt your video, but we are Burning Lights Ministries, and we came to ask you for just a little bit of help. This is hours of our labor and our effort and our energy into recording and editing and posting and promoting these videos. And we don't get any money from them. YouTube doesn't pay us. Podcasting doesn't pay us. And so this is all while juggling 3 children and a full-time evangelistic ministry. And so if you could help us by sending us an offering, we have all the links in the description. You can find us on burninglightsministries.com. That would be so very, very helpful. It helps us to continue to do this and put out content like this so that we can continue to spread the gospel as much as we're able. So please give us some help, and we know you'll be blessed for it. Now let's get back to enjoying that wonderful video.
So bringing this back into a less philosophical realm, when he says don't make a graven image, what he's saying is do not make something in the natural world your God. Your possessions or drugs or some experience that you could have, or your big fancy vacations, or, your wedding is coming up and you want it to be the most immaculate party anyone's ever been to. Whatever it is, anything in the natural world, don't make that your God. And don't superimpose your will upon God, right? Don't impose something that's not been said on God. And that's easy to do, right? Because that's the whole golden calf issue is I'm going to, make God something. I'm going to make God something. And so don't make God something. Yeah, I knew a guy one time that told me that it was okay for him and his fiancée to sleep together because they were getting married. And I said, but that's a sin. And he said, no, it's not a sin. God told me it was okay. Well, number one, no, God didn't. That was you. You told you it was okay. God didn't say that because God doesn't violate his own word. But you see how that happens? That I want it so bad that I'm willing to impose that on God, even though that's not been established. I'm going to grave that into him. And so don't do that. Don't put yourself and your desires on God. Just let him be God. And when he doesn't talk or when he doesn't reveal something, just say it's what I want. And if it's against the word of God, just don't do it. Give him an unconditional yes, like we talked about in the last episode. But he said, when you make these graven images, don't make them, don't bow down to them, don't serve them. So don't take something in the natural and begin to subordinate yourself to it, right? Don't sacrifice unto something that's natural and something that's in the world. So objects, possessions, pastimes, addictions, compulsions. Don't sacrifice your time. Don't give all of your time and then you never see your kids so you can make money, or ignore your children so you can play on your phone or scroll Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is. Don't make sacrifices of your health so you can keep vaping. Don't make sacrifice because what you're doing is you're making sacrifices to this natural object, making it your God. What's the difference? When they jumped on the sacrifice in the days of Baal and they cut themselves and bled on the sacrifice to call fire down from heaven, which they couldn't, by the way, because it's not as good as you think and it's not going to work out like you think it is. But when you make sacrifices of your health, it's the same thing as cutting yourself and bleeding on your sacrifice to a God. And so a lot of people, they take cigarettes or they take marijuana or they take drugs or they take alcohol or they take something or they take food. I mean, you can make food your God until you're totally destroying your body. This food is so important to you in your life. And so don't do that. Don't sacrifice your health. Now, I'm not a health nut. Believe me, I'm not. But don't sacrifice your health. Don't sacrifice all of your time or your family. Don't sacrifice your marriage to something that you want. Don't be so interested in your truck or be so interested in what's going on in a tree stand or a bass boat that you totally ignore your wife until she leaves. Don't do that to yourself. Don't make those kinds of sacrifices to false gods. Does it mean you can't have pastimes? No. Does it mean you can't eat good food? No. Does it mean if you're, some pounds overweight that you're an idolater and you're going to hell? No, I'm not trying to say any of that. All I'm trying to say is this is not what God wants. This commandment was given for our protection. Don't sacrifice yourself or your family or your time or anything that you have for a bunch of stuff, for a bunch of natural worldly things, right? And don't sacrifice your morals. Don't compromise. If you've got to compromise to get the promotion, then it's not your promotion. It's not from God. Don't go for it. If you've got to compromise to keep this certain circle of friends, they're not a blessing in your life. They're not from God. Don't give that kind of sacrifice. Don't give a spiritual sacrifice or a physical sacrifice or the sacrifice of effort or sweat or time. Don't give a family sacrifice. Just don't do it. Don't bow yourself down to these images because it's not good for you. And then don't serve them. To serve right there just means to continually yield, right? To enslave yourself. Don't enslave yourself to something in the natural world. Don't give all that you have. This is a good time to bring up pornography because so many young men are bound up with pornography and they're giving up relationships. They're destroying their marriage. They're shirking their children. They're paying out their money for this compulsion and this addiction to pornography. Get rid of that stuff. Get it out of your life. Somebody said, I can't. Oh, you can, but you may have to sacrifice your Wi-Fi and you may have to sacrifice your smartphone. And I know that because I've done that. That's my experience talking. That's how I conquered it. Okay. I've dealt with it. And so I'm not sitting here just saying, well, it's not easy. It's not easy to cut yourself off from the internet for a couple of years till you can get this thing under your feet, but it may be what you have to do. And so when I was a teenager, that's what I had to do. And that's what I did. And I got it under my feet. And so what I'm saying is, don't enslave yourself. Don't serve something in the natural. And it's not just pornography. While I'm talking to the young men, video games. I've known people that destroyed ministries over video games. They destroyed relationships over video games. They give up all their time. They don't even sleep because they're up playing. Listen, it's a compulsion at times. It's an addiction at times. I'm not saying that everybody has to do what I did and throw all your video games out. I did that. God spoke to me to do that because I was addicted to video games. And I threw them out when I was, I think, 17. And so, and it was a blessing to my life. I didn't know how much more time I would have. I didn't know how much more of a clear mind I would have that I could give unto the Lord. I could pray more. I could seek God. I could turn my affection towards him. And so don't enslave yourself. And now it's not just young men. You can take your credit card and you can run up bills you can barely pay, and you can enslave yourself to working overtime to pay for your shopping habit, to pay for your Amazon account, to pay for your whatever. And it's like, don't do it. Don't enslave yourself. Don't drag yourself to work so tired in the morning because you watched Netflix all night and didn't sleep. That's enslaving yourself to the natural things and the natural desires. And that is to make a graven image. Just don't do that stuff. It doesn't mean that certain things are okay in moderation. It just means don't become a slave. I have watched people, and I know you've watched this, and some of you have done this, okay? I have watched people go outside during a pouring rain or during a flurry of snow in the freezing cold with no coat and shiver so they can smoke a cigarette. Don't do that. Why would you want to be such a slave? Why would you want to be a slave to something this big? Why would you want to be a slave like that? Don't do that in your life. God doesn't want you to do that in your life for your sake. So don't enslave yourself. Don't give everything. Now, I know that sometimes you have to make sacrifices in life for things. And now that's not necessarily always a bad thing. It comes down to motive because, maybe you're a guy and you're saying, well, I just got to work a little bit of overtime for the next month because school's coming up and my kids need school clothes and we're just out of money and we can't afford it. We're a one-income family and it's just, and like, I get it. And, that's called responsibility, making sure your kids have things, even if it takes a sacrifice. That is in line with the order of God, right? And quick side note, you can also take care of things like that with prayer, but we won't go there. But that's called responsibility, and that's okay. And that's a good thing at times in moderation. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to be working overtime because we bought cars we can't afford because we like to look good at the stoplight. And now we've got too many bills and not enough money. And so we're slaves to this 80-hour work week because it's not blessing everything underneath it, right? It's destroying. God's not at the top anymore. And so all of these things go together. At the end of it, we realize that God is jealous. He's just jealous. He loves you. You belong to him. He purchased you with his own blood. And so because you're so important to him, just like my wife is important to me, when a suitor comes in, which she would never, but if there was a man vying for her affections, I would very violently cut that off. And God is willing to very violently cut you off from the things that are vying for your affection. Don't be so quick to give your affection out. Don't be so quick to sell yourself to a lesser life than living for God, because it is your best. And he loves you and he wants you. And he knows, he said, I'm visiting the iniquity upon generation after generation after generation. He knows how this stuff goes. He knows that on down through the generations, my images get passed down. When Rachel left town, you remember this? When Rachel left town, she stole her daddy's gods, which I think is hilarious that Laban had to go look for his gods and couldn't even find them. And he had to go home and make new gods, I guess. What a dumb God is that? But look at that. Here, daddy raises her with gods. And when she leaves town, she's holding her gods. And so I don't want my children to leave my house and go out into the world carrying my gods. I don't want that. I want them to carry the God. I want them to carry healing and deliverance and peace and joy and power in the sweet name of Jesus into their generation. And so you're sowing seeds that your children and your grandchildren will reap. And I know that by experience because my wife is a 5th generation preacher, and I've seen what that does generation after generation serving the Lord. It just gets better and better and sweeter and sweeter. And so God knows this stuff has repercussions down the road, and he's jealous for you and he loves you and he's trying to pull you away. So don't get all defensive and don't, oh God, I really like. Just let go. Just let go and let him be the God that saves you from yourself. And remember this, he's a God of mercy. What did he say? And showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and that keep my commandments. There is mercy. When you begin to keep these commandments, God shows mercy. You're not going to get it all right. But when in your heart, you're saying, I'm not going to have any graven images. And when you realize you've got them, you repent to follow the commandment. There's mercy. There's help. There's strength. Just love him. Love him back. How do you love him? How do you love God? Well, you don't hug him. You don't kiss him. It's not even by lifting your hands and singing worship songs. It's by keeping his commandments. That's what he said. Keep his commandments. That's how we know we love God. And so love him. Keep his commandments. Destroy every idol. Let him be the infinite God. Let him be the God of the impossible. Watch what great things he does in your life. I know it's going to be good. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please give it a like. Please share it. Please comment down below. Tell me what you like. Tell me what gods in your life God has told you to destroy and get rid of it. And as always, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. You're not going to want to miss a single video. We're going through every single one of the 10 commandments. We're out there wherever you're listening to your podcast. You can listen to this there also. Find us on social media. And please, if you want to support us financially to help make this content, the best way you can do that is burninglightsministries.com. You give a one-time gift, or you can support us monthly so we can keep making great content like this. And we would be so very grateful if you consider doing that. And as always, keep on burning. I'll see you next time.